A woman sat on a park bench, calmly eating a sandwich while watching his peacock chase with the expression of someone enjoying premium entertainment. Her coffee-colored hair escaped from beneath a Yankees cap, and dirt smudged her fingernails. As she took another bite, "Help," Blake shouted, leaping onto the bench beside her. "Oh, that's just Maurice," she said matter-of-factly. He escaped from the zoo again. Quite friendly once you get to know him. Friendly, Blake gasped. "He's trying to murder me." "No, he's trying to mate with you. You're wearing blue, his favorite color." She gestured at a silk tie with her sandwich. "You're being sexually harassed by a peacock." The absurdity hit Blake like a physical blow. He stared at the peacock, now performing an elaborate mating dance below the bench. Then at this stranger who'd just delivered the most ridiculous diagnosis of his life. He laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded so foreign it startled him. "I'm Rose." "Campbell," she said, extending a dirt-streaked hand. "And you're the most entertaining thing that's happened in this park all week, Blake Harrison," he replied, surprised by how normal it felt to shake her hand. Apparently a peacock magnet. Rose's eyes widened. "Harrison." "The billionaire getting engaged today to Victoria Blackwood." Blake's stomach clenched. "Unfortunately, yes. If Morris doesn't kill me first, I'll be legally bound to a woman who thinks emotions are a character flaw? You don't sound thrilled about it. Would you be excited about a business merger disguised as marriage?" The words escaped before he could stop them. Dangerous honesty with a stranger. Rose studied his face with unsettling intensity. Here she pulled a small bag from her gardening kit. "Maurice loves these. Throw some over there," Blake scattered. The seeds, and Morris immediately abandoned his courtship to investigate the treats. "You're a genius," Blake said, slumping against the bench in relief. "I'm a gardener. We deal with all kinds of wildlife, including the humankind." Blake looked at her properly for the first time. Wild hair, dirt under her nails, old jeans, and a t-shirt reading, "I'm not arguing. I'm just explaining why I'm right." But her green eyes held an intelligence that made his chest tighten strangely. "So Rose finished her sandwich. Tell me about this marriage of convenience. Does she at least have personality?" "Victoria's idea of humor is firing people on their birthdays," Blake said without thinking. Rose winced. "Ouch. And you're okay with this?" "I don't have a choice. My father's company is hemorrhaging money. This marriage saves both families from bankruptcy." "What about love?" Blake laughed bitterly. "Love is a luxury I can't afford. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard," Rose said, and Blake was startled by the genuine pain in her eyes. "Everyone deserves love, do they?" Blake asked. "I've been groomed for this my entire life. Take over the company, marry the right woman, produce the right heirs. I don't even know what I actually want anymore." Rose was quiet for a moment. "What makes you happy?" The question hit like a sucker punch. When had anyone last asked him that? "I used to paint," Blake said quietly. "Watercolors. Stupid, I know." "Why is that stupid?" "Because billionaires don't paint pretty pictures. They make money." "Says who?" Blake opened his mouth to answer, then realized he didn't know. Rose's phone buzzed. She sighed, checking it. "I have to get back to work. The roses won't prune themselves." "Wait," Blake said, surprised by his urgency. "Thank you for the peacock rescue, for asking what makes me happy. No one's asked me that in years." Rose smiled a real smile that made Blake's chest feel strange and tight. "Well, Blake Harrison, I hope you find your happiness, even if it's not with Victoria Blackwood." She stood to leave, then turned back. "Oh, and Blake, next time you come to the park, maybe avoid the blue tie, unless you want another date with Morris." Blake actually laughed as she walked away, still humming to herself. His phone rang again. Victoria, demanding his presence for photos with her father's investors. "I'll be right there," he said, but his eyes remained fixed on the spot where Rose had vanished. For the first time in his life, Blake Harrison was questioning everything he thought he knew about his future. And it was all because of a peacock attack and a woman who asked him what made him happy. His phone buzzed. Car waiting. Engagement ring in glove compartment. "Good luck, sir." Brushed dirt from his suit and walked toward his waiting car. In 3 hours, he'd be engaged to Victoria Blackwood. But all he could think about was a gardener with dirt under her fingernails, and the most beautiful smile he'd ever seen. The Plaza Hotel ballroom looked like a wedding magazine, had exploded white roses everywhere. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbow patterns across marble floors, and enough photographers to document a royal coronation. Blake stood in his fresh tuxedo, smiling until his face ached, while Victoria clung to his arm like a designer barnacle. "Smile bigger, darling," Victoria whispered through perfect teeth. "Remember, we're madly in love." Blake's face felt like it might crack. All he could think about was Rose asking what made him happy, and his complete inability to answer. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria's father boomed into the microphone, his voice echoing off gilt walls. "I present my daughter Victoria and her fiancé, Blake Harrison."
And the crowd of Manhattan's elite applauded as Blake and Victoria posed for more photos.
Camera flashes strobed like lightning, temporarily blinding him. That's when he spotted something that made his heart skip a flash of familiar coffee-colored hair near the service entrance. Rose. What was she doing here? "Blake, you're supposed to be looking at me, not the catering staff," Victoria hissed, her nails digging into his arm. "Right, sorry," Blake mumbled, but his eyes kept drifting toward the back of the room. It was definitely Rose, wearing a black catering uniform and carrying a silver tray of champagne flutes. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and Rose's face cycled through surprise, horror, and barely contained laughter. Blake tried to focus on Victoria's speech about joining two business empires in holy matrimony, but he was mesmerized, watching Rose navigate through the crowd. She moved with natural grace, even while balancing a full tray and dodging handsy socialites who treated her like furniture. "And now," Victoria announced, her voice cutting through his distraction, "Blake, would like to say a few words about our love story." Blake panicked. "Love story? What love story?" He grabbed the microphone with sweaty hands, his mind completely blank. Blake's eyes found Rose again. She was shaking her head frantically, mouthing no, from across the room. "Victoria. And I have a very unique relationship." Rose's eyes widened in alarm as he continued improvising wildly. "We've known each other since childhood, and our families have always been close." Rose was now making frantic, throat-cutting gestures, but Blake couldn't stop himself. "In fact, just this morning, I was thinking about what love really means." The ballroom went silent. Victoria's smile became murderous. Love is like being chased by a peacock." Rose had given up gesturing and was now covering her face with her hands. "You see," Blake continued, digging himself deeper, "sometimes love comes at you when you least expect it. Sometimes it's terrifying. Sometimes you run away. Sometimes you find someone who understands peacocks." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Victoria's father looked apoplectic. "And that's when you realize that maybe you've been wearing the wrong color tie your whole life. And maybe what you really need is someone who carries birdseed and asks you what makes you happy. And maybe arranged marriages are just fancy business deals." Victoria yanked the microphone away. "What Blake means," she said through gritted teeth, "is that love is full of surprises. Isn't that right, darling?" Blake looked at Victoria, then at Rose, then at the 200 confused faces staring at him. The weight of his mistake crashed down like a building collapsing. "Right?" he said weakly. The crowd clapped uncertainly. Victoria's smile could have cut glass as she pulled him aside. "What the hell was that?" she hissed. "Peacocks. Birdseed. Have you lost your mind?" "I'm sorry, my father is furious. Investors think you're having a nervous breakdown." "And that speech about arranged marriages? You just humiliated both our families." Blake watched Rose moving through the crowd, collecting empty glasses with practiced efficiency while pretending not to exist. Their worlds were so different, their authenticity, his performance, her freedom, his golden cage. "I need some air," Blake said. "You need to fix this," Victoria snapped. "Smile, mingle, and for God's sake, stop staring at the help." Blake nodded absently. But as Victoria returned to damage control with their guests, found himself gravitating toward the service area. Rose was loading dirty glasses onto a cart, her movements quick and precise. Fancy meeting you here, Blake said quietly. Rose jumped, nearly dropping a champagne flute. Mr. Harrison, I am and congratulations on your engagement.
What?
That was quite a speech about the peacocks. About the wrong color tie, Rose said, a smile tugging at her lips despite herself. I'm pretty sure you just told 200 people that. Your arranged marriage is a sham. Blake ran his hands through his hair. I think I just destroyed my life. Or maybe you just started living it, Rose said softly. Before Blake could respond, Victoria appeared like a beautiful storm cloud. Blake, darling, the Times photographer, wants a few more shots, she stopped, really seeing Rose for the first time. Oh, you're the catering girl, Rose Campbell, ma'am, Rose said politely. But Blake caught the fire in her eyes. Victoria's gaze swept over Rose dismissive with messy hair. The simple uniform, the dirt still visible under her nails despite the gloves. Well, Rose, perhaps you could fetch us some more champagne? The good stuff, not the domestic. Victoria's tone was sugar-coated poison. Of course, Rose said evenly right away. But as Rose turned to go, Victoria's next words stopped her cold. And do be careful with the crystal. I know how clumsy the help can be around expensive things. Rose turned back slowly, her green eyes now ice-cold. I'll be very careful, Miss Blackwood. After all, I'd hate to break something as fragile as she paused, letting her gaze sweep over Victoria's perfect facade, as valuable as crystal. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Victoria's perfect composure cracked just slightly, revealing something sharp and ugly underneath. Blake found himself holding his breath, caught between two women who represented everything he was supposed to want and everything he never knew he needed. Rose, Blake said quietly, wait. But she was already walking away, her shoulders straight with dignity that no amount of money could buy. Victoria's hand tightened possessively on Blake's arm. Really, Blake? Fraternizing with the staff? Would people think? Blake watched Rose disappear through the service doors, then looked at Victoria, beautiful, appropriate. Everything his family expected, and for the first time, he truly understood what a cage looked like. Blake couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., he stood on the terrace of his penthouse, Manhattan's lights sprawling below like scattered diamonds. But all he could see was Rose's face when Victoria called her the help. The contempt in his fiancée's voice had cut deeper than any business deal gone wrong. His phone bootsada, text from an unknown number, your peacock friend is back at the zoo. Thought you'd want to know he's safe. Our Rose had somehow gotten his number. Blake stared at the message, his chest tightening with an emotion he couldn't name. He typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, thank you. Are you okay? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, I'm fine. Rich people say terrible things when they think poor people can't hear. She was wrong to treat you that way. Was she? Or was she just saying what you were thinking? The accusation hit like a physical blow. Blake set the phone down, pacing the length of his terrace. Is that what Rose thought of him? That he saw her as less than human? Just like Victoria did? His phone rang. Victoria's contact photographed her polished smile and perfectly arranged blonde. Hair filled the screen. Darling, I couldn't sleep either, she purred. I keep thinking about our future. Daddy's already planning the merger announcement for next week. Victoria, about tonight? Oh, that silly speech? Don't worry, I've already spun it to the press as pre-wedding nerves. Very romantic, actually. It's a tortured billionaire who can only express his love through metaphors. Blake closed his eyes. What if it wasn't a metaphor? Don't be ridiculous. You're just overwhelmed. Once we're married and you settle into your role, you'll feel much better. My role is my husband, of course. Daddy's already cleared out. An office for you at Blackwood Industries. You'll love the view. The cage door slammed shut with an audible click. Blake realized Victoria had already planned his entire future and not with him, but for him. I have to go, Blake said. Sleep well, darling. Tomorrow we're meeting with the wedding planner. I've already picked the flourish white roses naturally. So elegant, don't you think? Blake hung up without answering. The next morning, Blake found himself back in Central Park, standing by the same bench where he'd met Rose. It was foolish to be at work. Probably pruning roses somewhere he'd never think to look. But he needed to be here, in the one place where he'd felt like himself. Looking for Maurice? Blake spun around. Rose stood behind him wearing dirt-stained gardening clothes, her hair escaping from beneath a wide-brimmed hat. She looked beautiful, and real in a way that made his chest ache. Looking for you, actually, Blake said honestly. Rose's expression guarded. If you're here to apologize for your fiancé, don't bother. I've dealt with worse. I'm here to apologize for myself. Blake stepped closer. You asked if I thought the same things Victoria did, and the truth is, I don't know. I've lived in that world so long, I might not even notice when I'm being cruel. Rose studied his face. It's either very honest or very calculating. It's honest. I'm tired of calculating. Something shifted in Rose's expression. What do you want, Blake? The question hung between them like a bridge he was afraid to cross. What did he want? For 32 years, other people had answered that question for him. I want to paint again, Blake said quietly. I want to feed birds in the park without worrying about photographers. I want to have conversations about something other than stock prices and social climbing. Those are things you want to do. What do you want? Blake looked at Horelli, taking in the smudge of dirt on her cheek. The way she stood with her weight slightly forward, like she was ready to run or fight.
Oh.
The intelligence in her green eyes that saw right through his expensive armor. I want to know what makes you laugh the way you did yesterday, Blake said. I want to understand how you can work with your hands and still be the smartest person in any room. I want to know why you carry birdseed in your bag and whether you really think everyone deserves love. Rose's breath caught. Blake, I know I'm engaged. I know you're probably wondering if I'm some rich asshole who thinks he can play with people's feelings because he has money. Maybe I am. But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm waking up from a 30-year coma. You're getting married tomorrow. Blake's stomach dropped. What? It's in all the papers. Society wedding of the century. Tomorrow at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Blake pulled out his phone, scrolling frantically through missed calls and messages. Victoria had moved up the wedding without telling him. His father, his assistant, everyone was in on it except him. You're afraid I'll change my mind, Blake said, the realization crushing him. Will you? Blake looked at Rose, standing there. In her gardening clothes, with dirt under her nails and hope carefully hidden in her eyes. In 24 hours, he'd walk down an aisle toward a life that would slowly suffocate everything real inside him. Yes, Blake said. Am I changing my mind right now? Rose stepped back. Blake, you can't just come with me. Leave right now. We'll drive somewhere, anywhere. I have enough money to disappear completely. You're asking me to run away with you? I don't even know your middle name. It's James. Blake James Harrison. I'm 32. I hate Brussels sprouts. I secretly love romantic comedies, and I've been dead inside until I met you. Blake grabbed her hands. What else do you need to know? Oh. Rose pulled away, pacing in a small circle. This is insane. You're having a breakdown because of your wedding, and I'm some random girl you met in a park? In 6 months, you'll realize this was all fantasy and resent me for helping you destroy your life. Or maybe in 6 months, I'll finally be living instead of just existing. Blake, I love you. The words fell between them like stones into still water. Rose froze. You don't know me well enough to love me, she said quietly. I know you're kind to escaped peacocks and rude billionaires. I know you're not impressed by money or intimidated by bullies. I know you think everyone deserves love. You smell like roses and earth and everything real. I've been missing my whole life. Tears gathered in Rose's eyes. This is crazy. The craziest thing I've ever done, Blake agreed. Also the sanest. Rose looked at him for a long moment, this man, who'd just offered to give up everything for someone he'd known for 24 hours. Her expressions cycled through disbelief, fear, and something that might have been love. If we do this, she said, finally, there's no going back. Your family will disown you. Victoria will destroy you in the press. You'll lose everything. I already lost everything, Blake said. I just never noticed because I was too busy accumulating things I didn't want. Rose took a shaky breath. My car's parked on 5th Avenue. Blake's heart nearly stopped. Is that a yes? Let's find out who we are when we stop being who we're supposed to be. Blake kissed her then, desperate and grateful and terrified. Rose kissed him back, tasting like possibility and freedom in the future he'd never dared to imagine. When they broke apart, Rose was smiling through her tears. And so she said, "Where exactly does a runaway billionaire take a gardener?"
Anywhere.
"But here," Blake said, taking her hand. As they walked toward her car, Blake's phone exploded with calls from Victoria, his father, his assistant. He turned it off and dropped it in a trash can. The first time in his life, Blake Harrison was choosing his own path, even if it led straight off a cliff. Rose's beat-up Honda Civic had never carried a billionaire before, and it seemed to know it. The engine wheezed as they climbed into the Catskill Mountains, jazz music crackling through tinny speakers, while Blake sat in the passenger seat, still wearing his tuxedo from the night before. "So this is what freedom feels like," Blake said, watching endless trees blur past the window. "Freedom feels like a 12-year-old car that might die at any moment," Rose asked, downshifting as they climbed a steep hill. "Freedom feels like not knowing where we'll sleep tonight." They'd been driving for 6 hours, stopping only for gas and terrible coffee at highway rest stops. Blake had never felt so alive. "I know a place," Rose said, turning onto a dirt road that wound through dense forest. "My aunt's cabin. She's in Florida for the winter." The cabin was straight out of a fairy tallow-weathered wood, stone chimney, windows that glowed warmly against the gathering dusk. Blake helped Rose carry supplies inside, marveling at the simple beauty of the space. Handmade quilts, books stacked on every surface, the lingering scent of pine and old paper. "It's perfect," Blake said. "It doesn't have a wine cellar or a doorman," Rose warned. "It has you," Rose blushed, busying herself with lighting the fire. "I still can't believe we did this." "By now your wedding guests are probably arriving at the cathedral." Blake's stomach clenched as he imagined the scene: Victoria in her designer gown, discovering he'd disappeared. His father's fury, the media circus that would follow. The panic he expected didn't come. Instead, he felt oddly peaceful. Blake. Rose had stopped tending the fire. "Your phone's been buzzing." Blake looked down. He'd bought a burner phone at their last stop, but somehow Victoria had gotten the number. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages. The latest read: "Find him, whatever it takes." "Victoria, she's not going to give up," Rose said quietly. "I know. She's going to come after both of us. I know that too." Rose sat beside him on the ancient couch. "Are you having second thoughts?" Blake turned to face her. In the firelight, she looked like something from a Renaissance painting, a warm skin and thoughtful eyes. "Are you?" "I keep thinking about my normal life. My apartment, my job, my friends, who think I've lost my mind." Rose touched his face gently. "Then I look at you, and normal seems overrated." Blake kissed her palm. "Tell me about your normal life." "Boring stuff. I work for the Parks Department, designing community gardens. I live in a studio apartment in Queens with a cat named Hemingway. I read too much, cook too little, and my mother calls every Sunday to ask when I'm getting married." "What will you?" "Tell her now that I ran away with a billionaire who got sexually assaulted by a peacock," Rose said solemnly. Blake burst out laughing, kind of deep, helpless laughter he hadn't experienced since childhood. Rose joined him, and soon they were both gasping, tears streaming down their faces. "This is insane," Rose said between giggles. "Completely insane," Blake agreed. They made dinner together, pasta with jarred sauce and wilted salad from a gas station, and Blake couldn't remember food ever tasting so good. They talked until midnight about everything and nothing. Rose's dreams of opening her own landscape design firm, Blake's secret poetry habit, their favorite books, worst first dates, deepest fears. Blake said, as they lay by the dying fire, "Something for people who didn't have real responsibilities." "What do you think now?" "I think love is the only real responsibility." Rose curled against his chest. "Tomorrow's going to be complicated." "Tomorrow's going to be hell," Blake corrected. "But we'll face it together." They fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in quilts, in each other's arms. Blake dreamed of peacocks and white roses, of running through mazes with no exit. He woke to the sound of car engines. "Rose." Blake shook her gently.
Out.
"Rose, wake up." Through the window, Blake could see headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. Multiple expensive ones. "How did they find us?" Rose asked, instantly alert. "GPS on your car, probably. Or my credit card from yesterday." Blake cursed himself for being so naive. The car stopped, door slamming like gunshots in the morning. Quiet, Victoria emerged from a black sedan, stunning, even at 6 a.m. in her designer coat and perfect makeup. Behind her came Blake's father, two men in expensive suits who looked like lawyers, and a woman with a camera. Blake Harrison. Victoria's voice carried clearly through the thin cabin walls. I know you're in there. Come out so we can discuss this like civilized people. What do we do? Rose whispered. Blake looked at her, hair messy from sleep, eyes wide with fear, clutching his hand like a lifeline. He thought about the life waiting for him back in Manhattan. Board meetings and charity galas, a marriage built on mutual convenience. Slow suffocation disguised as success. Face them, Blake said. They dressed quickly and stepped onto the cabin's small porch together. Victoria's perfect composure cracked when she saw them, Blake rumpled and unshaven, Rose in yesterday's clothes. Their obvious intimacy. Really, Blake? Victoria's voice could have frozen champagne. A gardener? This is your great rebellion? This is my choice, Blake said calmly. Your choice. Blake's father stepped forward, his face purple with rage. You've embarrassed both. Our families destroyed a crucial merger and made me a laughingstock. All for some careful, Blake warned, his voice deadly quiet. She's nobody, his father exploded. A gardener. What could she possibly offer you that Victoria can't? Blake felt Rose tense beside him, saw her start to step back. He caught her hand, holding tight. She asks me what makes me happy, Blake said simply. Happiness? Victoria laughed bitterly. You're willing to destroy everything for happiness? How pathetically naive. What are you willing to destroy for appearances? Blake shot back. The photographer raised her camera, but Blake's father waved her off. Put that away. We're not here to create more scandal. Then why are you here? Rose asked, speaking for the first time. Victoria's gaze swept over her dismissively. To make you an offer, dear. How much? Excuse me, how much to disappear? Everyone has a price. Name yours. Blake felt Rose's hand tremble in his. She's not for sale, Victoria. Everyone's for sale, Blake. It's just a matter of finding the right currency. Victoria's smile was razor sharp. For some people, it's money. For others, it's the safety of people they care about. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Blake's father stepped forward with a folder. Blake, you're going to sign these papers, transferring your shares in Harrison Industries to Victoria's. Father, then you're going to come home and marry the woman you're supposed to marry. And if I don't, then Miss Campbell here might find herself facing charges. Theft, kidnapping, who knows. Amazing how quickly evidence can appear when you have the right connections. Rose paled, but her voice remained steady. You'd frame me? I'd protect my family's interests, Blake's father said coldly. Blake looked at the papers, then at Rose, then at the people who'd raised him to value everything except what actually mattered. There's a third option, Blake said quietly. Is. Blake smiled, same smile he'd inherited from his father, but warmer, more genuine. I call every major news outlet and tell them exactly how the Harrison and Blackwood families do business. Industrial espionage, bribery, the workers you've screwed over, the environmental damage you've covered up. All of it. His father's face went ashen. You wouldn't dare. I would. I have copies of everything insurance in case you ever tried to cut me out completely. Blake's smile turned sharp. Turns out all those years of grooming me to take over the company taught me exactly where the bodies are buried. Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. You're bluffing? Am I? Blake pulled out his new phone. Shall we find out? Have the New York Times on speed dial. Silence stretched taut as a wire. Finally, Blake's father stepped back. You're not my son, he said quietly. No, Blake agreed. I'm not. I'm better than that. The entourage retreated to their cars, Victoria pausing at the sedan door. This isn't over, Blake, she called. You'll regret this.
Not the only thing I regret,
Blake replied. It's taking so long. To leave. As the cars disappeared down the mountain road, Rose turned to Blake, her eyes shining. Did you really mean it? About having evidence? Blake grinned. Every word. Insurance policies are a family tradition. Rose threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. What happens now? Blake held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, the mountain air, the promise of a future he'd choose for himself. Now, he said, we figure out how to build a life together, even if it means giving up everything. Blake looked around at the simple cabin, the forest stretching endlessly in all directions. The woman in his arms who'd helped him remember who he really was. I'm not giving up everything, Blake said. I'm finally getting everything that matters. 1 year later, the community garden in Queens bloomed like a miracle in the middle of concrete and steel. Blake knelt between rows of tomatoes and sunflowers, his hands black with soil, sweat beading on his forehead in the August heat. A year ago, he wouldn't have known a radish from a turnip. Now he could coax life from the stubborn earth with the patience Rose had taught him. The Harrison Foundation representatives are here, Rose called from the garden's entrance, her voice mixing professional authority with barely contained excitement. Blake looked up from the seedlings he'd been transplanting. Across the garden, a group of suited executives stood out like exotic birds among the neighborhood families tending their plots. He recognized the lead woman, Sarah Chen, foundation director who'd been skeptical when Blake first approached them 6 months ago. With his proposal, Blake wiped his hands on his jeans and walked over, Rose falling into step beside him. They'd practiced this moment, but his heart still hammered against his ribs. Miss Chen, Blake extended a dirt-stained hand. Thank you for coming. Sarah shook it without hesitation, her expression thoughtful as she surveyed the thriving garden. Mr. Harrison, I have to admit, when you first pitched Gardens of Hope, thought it was another rich man's guilt project. But this, she gestured at the vibrant space around them. This is remarkable. The garden stretched across 2 full city blocks that had once been a vacant lot filled with broken glass and abandoned cars. Now it housed 50 individual family plots, a greenhouse, a children's learning area, and a small pavilion where the community gathered for classes and celebrations. It wasn't just me, Blake said, glancing at Rose. I had an excellent teacher. Rose blushed but stepped forward confidently. The program's been more successful than we projected. We're serving 300 families now, providing fresh food. In job training, the waiting list is over 2,000. Which brings us to why we're here, Sarah said. The foundation board has approved your expansion proposal. All of it. Blake felt his knees go weak. $10 million over 3 years. 25 new sites across the 5 boroughs. Full funding for your urban agriculture training program. Sarah smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Harrison. You're about to become a very busy gardener. Rose grabbed Blake's arm, her eyes shining with tears of joy. Around them, the other foundation representatives were taking photos, making notes, asking questions about soil composition and community engagement metrics. There is one condition, Sarah added. Blake's stomach clenched, which is, you want to feature your story in our annual report. From boardroom to garden, one man's journey to purpose. The publicity could help us fundraise for other projects. Blake hesitated. For the past year, he'd deliberately stayed out of the spotlight, letting his actions speak instead of his name. The media had eventually lost interest in the runaway billionaire story, focusing instead on the spectacular collapse of the Harrison-Blackwood merger, the subsequent scandal when Blake's evidence revealed years of corporate malfeasance. What? Do you think? He asked Rose quietly. I think you're not the same man who ran from peacocks in Central Park, she said. I think you're ready. Blake nodded to Sarah. We'll do it. As the foundation team continued their tour, Blake and Rose slipped away to their favorite Spoda small bench they'd built beneath an apple tree at the garden's heart. The late afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, painting everything in gold. $10 million? Rose said, still sounding dazed. Blake, do you realize what this means? It means we can help a lot more people, Blake said simply. It means you've officially become a better billionaire than you ever were. Blake laughed. Technically, I'm not a billionaire anymore. It was true. After paying legal fees, settling with his father's creditors, and funding the first garden. Blake's fortune had dwindled to what most people would consider a comfortable but modest savings account. He'd never been happier. "Good thing I'm not a gold digger," Rose teased, curling up against his side. "Good thing I finally figured out what real wealth looks like." Blake pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Rose's breath caught. "Blake, I know we said we didn't need papers or ceremonies or any of that traditional stuff," Blake said, his voice suddenly nervous. "Rose Campbell, I want the whole world to know that you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. I want to promise you forever, in front of everyone we love." He opened the box, revealing not a diamond, but a simple gold band with a tiny engraved rose. "I had it made from my grandfather's pocket watch-only family heirloom that actually meant something to me." Blake's hands shook slightly. "Will you marry me? Not because it makes financial sense or it looks good in the papers, but because I can't imagine growing old with anyone else." Rose was crying openly now, the tears streaming down her dirt-smudged cheeks. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course. Yes." Blake slipped the ring onto her finger, and Rose threw herself into his arms, laughing and sobbing at the same time. Around them, the garden hummed with life children playing between the rows. Elderly couples sharing evening conversations, teenagers learning to tend their first plants. "So what now?" Rose asked, when they finally broke apart. "And now we call your mother and tell her she's getting the son-in-law she never expected," Blake said. "Then we plan a wedding in a garden instead of a cathedral. And after that, Blake looked around at the world they'd built together, Missy. Imperfect, real.
After
That, we keep growing things, gardens, communities, each other." Rose kissed him softly, tasting like hope and earth and everything good he'd ever wanted. "I love you, Blake Harrison. I love you too, future Mrs. Harrison." "Actually, Rose," said with a mischievous smile, "I was thinking Rose Campbell Harrison." "I've gotten attached to my name. Whatever makes you happy," Blake said, echoing the question that had started it all. "You make me happy," Rose said simply, as the sun set over Queens, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Blake held the woman who taught him that the best things in life couldn't be bought, only grown. Somewhere in the distance, he could swear he heard the call of a peacock Morris, perhaps. Living his own happy ending at the zoo, Blake Harrison had finally found his purpose, his love, and his home. Not in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, but in a garden where anything could bloom if you gave it enough care. The end asterisk like this video if the story touched your heart. Subscribe for more emotional tales and share with someone who believes in the power of true love, and let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.